Hey guys, welcome back to Sideline Success Academy. Today we're going to be talking about a really difficult story, something that we can share with our athletes and hope them to understand the importance of the decisions that we make and how they can impact our lives. Today we're going to be talking about the story of Ray Rice and how one decision altered his life forever and how he's continuing to work today to build up his name, build up his character, and show people that he is somebody that can lead young men.
Quick handoff to Rice. Ray Rice. William James saved a touchdown.
Watch the vision of Ray Rice. I mean, that is vision and an outstanding cut. LaRon McClain goes to the outside. Ray Rice sees a little crease up on the inside, sticks his left foot in the ground or in the turf, and bursts up the field. That's what I'm talking about. You got to tackle Ray Rice in space. Big chunk there.
A 52-yard gain, and that's the Ravens' longest run of the season.
For the offense and the offensive coordinator, Cam Campbell.
So on first down, they go back to their money guy, Ray Rice. First down and more. Out of bounds in Lions territory. And Rice has it. And Ray Rice has a lot of room. Ray Rice, can he take it to the house? And Ray Rice has a Ravens touchdown. 59 yards.
Ray Rice had built a name for himself inside the NFL. At the time, he had been selected as a Pro Bowl running back. He had helped the Baltimore Ravens win the Super Bowl. He had fame, he had fortune, and he had a real bright future. In 2014, he committed a single act of domestic violence. He struck his fiancée at the time in an elevator. The news world got a hold of it, and suddenly the public had access to the video before anyone could know. The Ravens terminated his contract. The NFL has suspended him indefinitely. Now Ray Rice had lost everything that he had because of one decision. So what happens when you make a decision that costs you your success? Let me be clear. What he did was inexcusable, sinful. But what I want to talk about today is what happens after we make that decision. What happens after I make a mistake? What happens when that mistake becomes your identity? And what happens when one choice threatens to erase your entire story?
Rice is a three-time NFL Pro Bowler, played 6 seasons with the Ravens, winning a Super Bowl with the team back in 2012. As you know, his career was cut short when video was released showing him knocking unconscious his now wife, Janae, and dragging her from an Atlantic City elevator. Now, 10 years later, Ray, Janae, and their 2 children, they moved back here to Baltimore. And Ray says he has done extensive work to understand what happened to change and get a second chance at building a new life. Are you ready to give him the same? Watch this exclusive conversation with our Denise Koch, and you decide.
I've only got the chance to play for one organization, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm not looking backwards on something that happened. I got punished for something that I did terribly wrong. That's gonna happen in life. That's what's supposed to happen.
The beautiful thing about Ray's story is that we know God takes care of people who are willing to work past the wrong decisions that they make. If you look at the story of David, right, and how he went through an adulterous affair with Bathsheba and ended up having her husband killed or murdered in the process, we know that God claims that David is a person after God's own heart. And if God can still use David after the choices that he made, we know that God can continue to still use Ray Rice, even though he made a poor decision in 2014. So, looking at that, did God erase David? No. Did David face consequences for the decision he made? Absolutely. And so the Bible tells us that even though we make poor decisions, we still have consequences for those, but God can still use us and use our personal lives as a ministry for him. If you look at the Bible verse 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 10, it says, "Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house." That was the cost of sin. But God did not abandon David. He restored him through repentance. And that's what I want you guys to understand when we talk about Ray and his story in the NFL. Although he didn't have the same things that he had before the incident, he's still somebody who is getting used by God today. And in the years since the incident, Ray has owned up to his mistake. He didn't hide from it. He didn't blame anybody else. He called it what it was. He said it is wrong. He's spoken publicly about the damage that he caused. He's worked to raise awareness for domestic violence, and he's committed to being a better husband and father. Is that enough to restore his football career? No. But this isn't just about getting back on the field. It's about rebuilding the heart to be used by God. One bad decision can destroy a moment, it can destroy a reputation, and it can even destroy a career. But in Christ, no decision is beyond redemption. Romans chapter 5 verse 20 tells us, "But where sin increased, grace abounded all the more." God doesn't necessarily ignore our mistakes. He meets us in them, he disciplines us, and yes, he eventually helps us rebuild. So if you're listening today, the story that I want you to understand is that even though our kids can make a mistake, they need to be able to work past those mistakes and continue growing as individuals. Even though they may strip us of some of the things that we had before the mistake, God is using us in a way to build us up after the mistake. And even though you want to blame the mistake that you made and for the consequences that you're going through in your life, there is nothing that you can do to change them. You can't go back in the past and make a different decision. You can't take that moment back, and you can't outrun it. But what you can tell your kids is that if you listen to the stories of Ray, the story of David, know and understand that God still writes new chapters in your life. Even if you make a mistake, he's still willing to work past that and write new chapters in your life. And you may not get back the same things that you had in your old life, but you can still live a life that honors God. The most important thing is to understand that you messed up and that you continue to choose to be better every single day. So today, Ray Rice is now a junior varsity football coach at Milford Mill Academy in Maryland. He and his wife, Janae, who was the woman that was from the video, are still married. And regardless of how you feel about that situation, I believe that God has placed him there as a testimony to young men that he coaches in order to inspire them to make wise decisions and help them to chase greatness while looking out for the potholes in life that can derail anyone's life, regardless of the talent, money, or fame. And who better to tell that story than Ray Rice? So what you need to know is that listen to Ray's life. Listen to the story that it tells. Listen to the biblical principles that it tells, and then relay that information to your team. Because those young athletes that you have within your locker room may not listen to some old football coach who didn't make it to the league, but they might listen to the story of Ray and how he fell from one decision. But understanding that even if we fall, God's willing to help us work and grow and continue to use our lives as a testimony for him. Hey Coach, real quick, if you're getting value from this episode, I've got a small favor to ask. Take a second and share this video with another coach who could use a little extra encouragement today. Whether it's a teammate, someone in your district, or even a coach you look up to, pass it along. The mission here is to help build coaches up just like you, and it starts by spreading the word. So hit that share button, send it to a friend, and let's keep making an impact together. Thanks for being part of the team. That's going to wrap up our story on Ray Rice and how we can use his life and the life of David in order to help our kids overcome mistakes in their own lives and overcome mistakes in our own lives as well. I want to transition into learning about football. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about ASKA, learn what the acronym is, and how we can use it to break down film and help our kids become better athletes following game day execution. The principle ASKA is something that's been through the coaching world. I actually learned it from a guy on YouTube called Joe Daniel, but it is a universal principle that's been taught for quite a few years. It stands for alignment, stance, key read, and assignment. And essentially, the ASKA principle applies to every single position on the field, but they have their own version of ASKA. So they need to know where they're supposed to align, the stance that they're supposed to have, what their key read is on a play, and then the assignment after they get that key read. And so if you use those 4 things as a grading tool for your athlete, regardless of how physically able they are to do the role that they have, those are measures that they can do pre-snap and post-snap to determine whether or not they actually know what they're doing in the play. And we're going to talk about how we can use the ASKA principle in different positions to help grade film and help our athletes become better over time. We're going to kind of walk through the ASKA principle and how we could use it in a film study to kind of measure student success and how we can give them grades based off of what they're doing and how they're performing on film. And if you've never graded film before, it's a great way to kind of measure whether or not your kids are steadily increasing or decreasing in performance, and then give you some type of measurable way to get your students better. So just trying to give them a way or a goal in order to be better each and every single week. So on the screen here, you have 3-4 defense, which is what we primarily run, and then versus some type of 20 personnel. And we're just going to talk about a basic play where the offense may be running power, okay, because that's something that generally people will see regardless of where they go. Doubling here, he's pulling, wrapping, play side linebacker, boom, he's probably stepping off, sealing here, and then he's probably getting the ball. All right, so nothing too fancy, just kind of giving you a basic play here. When you're going in, you're starting an ASKA principle film study, okay? Your goal is to kind of give everyone a baseline of what they're doing right pre and during snap. So you want to make sure when you're going through and you're evaluating your kids, you start with the easy stuff. All right, so the baseline for everything starts out with a 0. And now after the play, they can end up with a positive or a negative. The negative can be a loaf. All right, so an example would be lack of effort. We just call that a loaf. And then the positive can be causing a fumble, causing a tackle. Those types of things will give them positive points on the board. And your ASKA is giving you a baseline. So if they don't do everything correct for their position pre-snap and during the play, then they can get a negative. All right, so let's just kind of go through here so you know what I'm talking about. All right, so in our 3-4, we're going to line up head up, okay, and we're going to slant, okay. Now, for this example, let's just say that I slanted toward or away from the sniffer back. So he was supposed to slant here, he was supposed to slant here, he was supposed to slant here. All right, so by an ASKA principle, they're all supposed to be head up. If they're not head up on the defensive line, they get deduct a point. That's an alignment. Make sure that their stance is good. All right, we're making sure that they're, if you want to do 4-point stances, then do 4-point stances. If they're in the 3-point stance, they're in the 3-point stance. But they need to be down in the stance, ready to go before the ball is snapped. All right, and then we go key read and then assignment. So a defensive line is going to have a different key read than most of the other positions on the field because their hands in the dirt and they're just responsible for that gap. But they want to make sure, okay, we want to make sure that they're still doing things correctly, such as spilling the ball and those types of things. So maybe we're evaluating this defensive end. We want to make sure that when he goes down here, all right, when he tries to slant and cut this guy off from getting the linebacker, we want to make sure that he doesn't get pushed outside. All right, so that would be his version of a key read. Whereas this backside linebacker who's supposed to be keying this guard, right? His key read would be pull, and so now he has to follow the pull, all right? And you can do this two ways. You can make him charge this at near A gap. I don't do that. We teach scraping over to clear, so I'm going to go over and help my buddy who's this play side linebacker, and now that would be his key read, and then his assignment is how well he executes it. All right, and then each position on the field has some version of key read and assignment, and for every single position it's a little bit different. But when you go through and you start measuring those principles, okay, and start grading on those performance habits, you're going to see what you're good at within your system, and then also what you're really bad at. And so if I'm grading week after week and I notice for some reason we cannot spill a kickout block, all right, within our system, that's a big deal. If we're not spilling the kickout block, well, then what do we need to work on in the defensive line? We need to work spill, and we need to work it a lot so that we get better at it. And then as we get better at spill, maybe I notice a different habit that we need to work on. And then you work on that habit. And over time, what you're doing is you're plugging the holes within your system, and you're making your system develop better. So now I'm replacing some of my I'm not necessarily having to take out my everyday drills, but I'm modifying to help them fit the needs that we have within our program. And so if you just go through and use those ASKA principles to help grade film study, and you don't have to give physical grades, you don't have to do those things, but you need to give them some type of measurable way to improve at their position. Right. And so for this linebacker, if he's not seeing the pull, maybe we got to work more time working and seeing guards pull. And then we get good at fitting that, right? Defensive line, if we're not spilling, we got to work some type of whatever you want to do, some type of spill drill. It could be wrong shoulder, it could be dent, whatever technique that you use. But we got to work spilling, okay? If our outside linebacker is not being a good force player for some reason, he's getting too wide or whatever, well, now we got to work on force, making sure that we're cutting grass down, maintaining an outside shoulder integrity, and trying to force a play back inside. So those are just things that you can do and study using the ASKA principles that kids should be able to do, right? They got pre-snap checks, they got post-snap checks. Are they getting to the spot correctly? Those are the things that you're doing. Now you're not really seeing how well my 140-pound defensive end or 180-pound defensive end is doing against a 250, 300-pound future offensive tackle, college offensive tackle. You're not necessarily just testing that. You're saying, what are they lining up correctly? What is their job? And are they doing their job to the best of their ability? And that way, everyone has a chance to be successful on the grade book. It's just making sure that your kids understand their role inside of your system, and then creating drills and in order to fix the holes that you see week after week. Because if you don't do that, if you don't grade film, then you're not going to get consistently better over time. And that's just how you can use that in order to create a better program for you and your kids. Well, that's a little bit on the ASKA principle and how you can use it in film study. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you took something away from it. Please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and then share with some coaching friends so that we can kind of help grow this channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Until next time. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Faith, Family, and Football. If you got value from this episode, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss a new drop. And don't forget, head over to SidelineSuccessAcademy.com to grab your free ebook, The 10 Things to Know Before You Start Coaching. And this applies to all coaches. Plus, for all my football coaches out there, you can grab my full 3-4 defensive playbook. And right now, you can save $10 with the code PODDISCOUNT10 at checkout. Again, that's PODDISCOUNT10. Thanks for hanging out with me. Stay strong in your faith, lead your family, and coach with confidence. Catch you next time.